bonjour. Hello. Is everyone super happy to be here? Yeah, I'm gonna take the microphone. I'm just pumping out the room. Allez Max, tu veux venir devant, comme ça sur la caméra, ça... Alrighty. Alrighty. Oh, hey. Hello everyone, how are you doing? Good? Yeah? Alright, cool. So for those that came for the workshop, it's not a workshop. I'm going to be giving out a talk, and we're going to be designing a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. Alright? We have some latecomers. Hi. Alright, cool. So, why do we need this? Well, first of all, there are not a lot of applications in crypto that have found like real product market fit, right? But there are a couple of ones. The first one, stablecoins. We've all used USDC, we've all used USDT, we've all used stablecoins. There's a tons of different stablecoin protocols. It has found real product market fit, right? There's another product that has found real product market fit, and it's called Bitcoin, obviously, right? When you talk to your grandma about crypto, they're like, oh, Bitcoin, right? Everyone knows about Bitcoin. When you combine those two, you get something cool. Because if you imagine that you can build a stablecoin backed by Bitcoin, then you're actually tapping into like this gigantic market of Bitcoin that's dormant, right? Because right now what you can do with Bitcoin is simple. You can hold it, you can transfer it. You can't actually program anything on it. But if we manage to be able to do that, then we'd be able to do the stablecoin, and that would make it really useful, right? All right. Why do we need it to be decentralized? Why can't we just have a centralized version? Well, centralized versions already exist. You have all pretty much used USDC, USDT. We want it to be trustless. Why is trustless important? Well, you don't want to have to trust anyone. Trustless means literally no trust, right? When you use USDC, you're trusting Circle not to steal your money. You're trusting it not to stop you from using the protocol. You're trusting them not to get stolen their money, right? And by building a trustless protocol, we don't need to trust anyone. That's why Bitcoin exists in the first place, right? It's like this trust issue that we have. Another good feature of being decentralized is uncensorable or censorship resistance. We don't want anyone to be able to say, hey, you actually can't use your funds. This already happens frequently for USDT and USDC. Most of the time for good reasons, it's for hackers, etc. But we could imagine, I don't know, if we were using USDT, they could say, oh, everyone that attended ETHCCAN is like an illegal criminal, and they won't be able to use USDT anymore. That's not a good thing, and by building a decentralized stablecoin protocol, we ensure that this won't ever happen. And also what's good is like, what better collateral than Bitcoin for decentralized stablecoin? We all know that decentralized stablecoin already exists on Ethereum. Usually it's backed by Ether or stuff like that. But Bitcoin is like the ultimate collateral for a decentralized stablecoin when you think about it. And actually, when you think about it, the US dollar used to be backed by gold, right? There was this thing called the gold standard where you could go to the Federal Reserve and you could say, hey, I have $1, give me back $1 worth of gold. You could do that. And before that, it was silver, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. This stopped in 1971, Richard Nixon. And now we have this thing called Bitcoin. It's actually called digital gold. So what better the collateral than digital gold for digital cash, right? It makes sense. Just makes sense. So then I'm like, hey, Scott, that's good to hear, but you started saying that you can't do anything on Bitcoin, right? You can only hold and transfer. So now the question becomes, can you do that on Bitcoin? And the answer is no. Right now, you can't do that. I mean, not in a trustless manner. Right now, what exists is multi-sig. So I'm going to explain how a multi-sig works. You have your Bitcoin on Bitcoin, and you want it to be transferred on Ethereum, right? Because on Ethereum, you can program stuff, but on Bitcoin, you can't. You have your Bitcoin on Bitcoin, you send it to someone on Bitcoin. This someone, usually a centralized entity. He takes your Bitcoin on Bitcoin, and he mints a new token on Ethereum, and he sends it your way. That's like how wrapped Bitcoin works. If you want to get back your Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network, what you do is you take your wrapped BTC on Ethereum, you send it to the guy, and the guy sends back the Bitcoin on Bitcoin. Great. This works. However, this is trusted. You're actually trusting the guy to give you back your Bitcoin. This is current tech. This is centralized. This already exists, right? All right. Thing is, it's not ideal. In the ideal scenario, we'd have like the full trustless setup, and we'll see how we get there. What's coming, though, in the following months is called BitVM. BitVM allows for something quite neat. Instead of trusting a single centralized entity, a single multi-sig, the trust assumption here is 1 out of n. So if you have 10 operators, you only need 1 operator to be honest, and you can trust the protocol, right? So this moves from having to trust like how convinced you about it. Now let's get to actually designing the stablecoin. So I see a lot of people here who might be really familiar with Bitcoin, with the stablecoin systems. You won't learn anything new here. The goal is really to design it from like a newbie perspective, walk you through how it's designed, and hopefully you'll really understand how it works. All right, so how it works? Well, we said it was Bitcoin backed. So the way it works is really simple. You have a protocol. You send to it, like you deposit 200,000, for example, 200,000 worth of Bitcoin, and the protocol will give you 1,000 worth of, I call it bitUSD, you can call it however you want. That's the stable coin. So there's a good application of that. It's like, imagine you have $1 million worth of Bitcoin, you're like a Bitcoin millionaire, and you want to buy your house. Thing is, your house is like 500K. You borrowed 100,000K, you're screwed because now you're under collateralized. Now it's not backed anymore. So people are gonna like run and exit, and it's going to fail and go down to 0. We don't want that. So in order to prevent that, we never let the deposit go smaller than the amount that you minted. When the deposit gets really close to what you minted, anyone can come in and liquidate. I'm sure everyone has heard about liquidations, but some newbies might be like, oh, I heard this word, but I don't really know what it means. It's quite simple, actually. Anyone can come in. This is called just-in-time liquidation. Anyone can come in, and since your deposit is too small to the bitUSD you minted, they can come in, reimburse your debt, and get back your deposit. And they're incentivized to do that because, as you can see here, the deposit is still bigger than the bitUSD, right? So they send $100,000 worth, they get back $110,000 worth, they take a cut, and the rest is given out to the protocol, right? But now there's one issue with this. What happens if like we have a big protocol with lots of CDPs, and then all of a sudden the Bitcoin price plunges? We're going to have lots and lots of liquidations happening at the same time, right? So everyone is going to be buying bitUSD in order to reimburse the debt. But if everyone is buying bitUSD at the same time, what's going to happen to the price of bitUSD? It's going to go up, right? But the whole point of a stable coin is to be stable. We don't want the price to go up. We want it to be stable, right? So in order to prevent that, we use this thing called stability pool. Stability pool is really simple. It's a staking pool, basically. Anyone who has bitUSD can stake their bitUSD in the stability pool. And now when liquidations happen, instead of people buying from the market, they'll be using the bitUSD in the stability pool. This won't affect the price of the bitUSD, and they'll be using these USD to reimburse the debt. Here in our example, we have Alice and Bob. Alice has about 150K, and Bob 50K, right? What happens? The liquidator comes in, he takes the bitUSD from the stability pool, he reimburses the debt of the CDP, and now the deposit of the CDP goes back to the stability pool, and the liquidator takes a cut. Now, the funny thing is, Alice initially started with $150K worth of bitUSD, but now she only has 75,000, but she also now has Bitcoin. She kind of bought Bitcoin, basically, right? She like DCA'd into Bitcoin, if you want. Plus, on top of that, she also got a part of the excessive deposit. She also gets like this neat fee, right? So now she started with 150K. Now she has 150 plus 6K. Same goes for Bob. So you can see that you're already incentivized to deposit in the stability pool because you're actually going to get some fees from liquidations. But on top of that, we need to make sure that there's a lot of bitUSD in the stability pool. So on top of that, we really need to incentivize the stability pool. And how do we do that? Well, remember earlier on, I said that when you reimburse the debt, there's an interest rate. It was set to 5%. Well, where does the interest go? Well, it goes to the protocol. So the protocol is actually making money. So the protocol is actually taking this fee that is generating from the interest, and these interests go to the stability pool. So the stability pool is incentivized both by interest from the protocol and by liquidation fees. By doing this, we ensure that a lot of people go in the stability pool and deposit. And there's also another thing. It's called amplification. So what's amplification? Well, you need to realize that not all bitUSD will be staked in the stability pool, right? Some might be used in liquidity pools, some might be used in lending markets, some might be used hopefully for payments, some might be just sitting in wallets doing nothing, right? And so since not everything is in the stability pool, if you only have like, say, 20% of all bitUSD existing that's staked in the stability pool, and the average interest rate of the protocol is 5%, then the yield you're getting from depositing in the stability pool is actually 25%, right? So by having 5% interest average, you're actually getting 25%, which is huge. So that's a neat feature of the stability pool. All right, but now what happens if the price, because the goal of the stablecoin is to be stable, right? We don't want it to go up, we don't want it to go down. So now you might be wondering, but Scott, what happens if the price goes down? If, say, the price is 90 cents, right? Well, in order to prevent that, we introduce redemptions. So redemptions is exactly what I mentioned earlier when I said that back in the days, you could go to the Federal Reserve, give $1 US, and get back $1 worth of gold. Here it's the same thing. You can always take one bitUSD, send it to the protocol, and the protocol will send back $1 worth of Bitcoin. It's exactly the same thing. It's called redemption. That's a neat thing. So how does it work? Because we need to ask ourselves here, where does the Bitcoin that is sent back coming from? Who is sending the Bitcoin? Because we have lots of CDPs, right? We have people who borrowed or who minted stablecoins versus their Bitcoin, but they want to keep their Bitcoin. Everyone here wants to keep their Bitcoin. That's the whole reason of the protocol. So who's going to be giving the Bitcoin to the redeemer? And now we circle back to the interest rate. Remember I said it was 5%? Well, I lied. It's not going to be 5%. Actually, when you create your CDP, when you create your position, you decide what the rate will be. You can decide, my rate is going to be 1% or 0.5% or 10%, right? But now the question is, who's going to pick 10%? Everyone's going to pick 0.5%. No one wants to pay it. Well, here's the catch. In order to decide who's going to get redeemed, who's going to pay the collateral, or pay the Bitcoin, basically, we order all existing CDPs by interest rate, right? And we pick the one with the lowest interest rate. And this is the one who's going to get redeemed. We remove one bitUSD from its debt, all right? We send $1 worth of Bitcoin to the redeemer, and that's how redemption works. So just to get that clear, say we have Alice who has a debt of 10 bitUSD and $50 worth of Bitcoin as collateral. She's like super greedy. She's like, oh, I have this interest rate, it's like 0.5%. It's great. Cool. Now, the price starts pegging a little bit, and people start redeeming, all right? She has the lowest interest rate of everyone, right? So she's going to get redeemed. Now, she had 10 bitUSD. she gets redeemed. She only has 9 bitUSD left, and she has a deposit, a collateral value. Instead it was $50, now it's now $49. So the CDP actually lost some Bitcoin, right? It lost some debt, but it lost also some collateral. So no one wants this to happen, right? Like most people, when they open a CDP, they want to get their Bitcoin back one day or another. They don't want to get less Bitcoin than what they deposited, right? So people are incentivized not to go at 0.5% and be super greedy. They're incentivized maybe going like 1%, 2% in order not to be the first one to get redeemed. And now you might be thinking, so you set your own interest rate. Now you might be thinking, but wait, it kind of sucks because imagine I open my CDP now at 2%, and 5 years down the road, I see that big redemptions are coming and everyone is at 3% and I'm gonna get redeemed. Well, the thing is you can actually adjust at any time your interest rate. So say you start at 1%, you can say, oh, actually now I'm gonna move, I'm gonna set myself to 5%, okay? But when you do that, you pay a 7 days fee, all right? So this is done to deter anyone from like playing with the interest rate and like being always at 0.5, watching the blockchain, and like when redemption comes, oh, I'm now at 2%. Okay, thank you. You can adjust at any time. But now the real question is, do we really want to go through the trouble of looking at the redemptions every day, looking at your interest rate every day, being kind of stressed and like, oh, am I going to get redeemed, etc. The good thing is this interest rate management, where you can go up and down and set your own interest rate, you can actually delegate it to someone else. You don't need to do that yourself, right? The interest rate manager that you delegate to, he can only modify your interest rate. He can't modify your collateral ratio, he can't add more Bitcoin or steal your funds, he can't do anything. The only thing that he is allowed to do is manage your interest rate in order for you not to get redeemed, right? And so by doing that, you're kind of like developing this ecosystem of interest rate managers where you could have different contracts, different managers doing different things. You could imagine, for example, some managers might tell you, all right, I'll give you a fixed 5% rate, all right? With me, it'll be fixed. If it goes up, I'll take the loss. If it goes down, I'll take the profit, right? I'm going to manage your interest rate, and I promise you it'll be 5% fixed. But you could also have, I don't know, someone offering you some range, for example, between 4 to 6%. And you could also have people who is going to tell you, all right, I'm going to optimize the heck out of this. It will always be the lowest interest rate, and I'll do my best in order for you not to get redeemed. And maybe other possibilities, right? We could have lots and lots of different contracts here. So just to recap, what happens if the price of the stablecoin goes goes down? Well, people will buy bitUSD to redeem. People will use bitUSD will redeem bitUSD, sorry. By doing this, people will move their interest back up because they're afraid of getting redeemed. All right. By having the average interest rate go up, this means that the protocol is making more fees. And by making more fees, the yield of the stability pool is going to go up. And with the amplification, it's going to be super up. And by doing this, we'll create more demand for bitUSD. More demand for bitUSD means price goes up. So we have like this double synergy of like, by redeeming, we ensure the peg doesn't depeg too much. Plus, when it does, we're actually incentivizing people to buy more bitUSD because the yield of the stablecoin, of the stability pool, will be just too good. All right, so I'm going to do like, this is the last slide. I'm just going to do a quick recap of what we've seen today. This is what a protocol looks like, right? So we have the protocol in the center with lots of different CDPs. Every CDP is over-collateralized. Everyone has deposited Bitcoin and minted bitUSD. The protocol is making protocol fees. These fees comes from the interest that is paid by the people who open CDPs. The protocol fees are mostly directed to the stability pool in order to incentivize people to deposit in the stability pool. Anyone can deposit bitUSD to the stability pool. The stability pool is used when liquidations happen. Liquidations happen when people get when the collateral ratio of a CDP is going down. So this means that the deposited amount of collateral is too close to the amount of stablecoin minted. And redemptions can happen when the price goes down. I mean, they can happen anytime, but it only makes sense to use them when the price goes down, and this ensures a good peg. So this is like a quick diagram of how a stablecoin could work. There are lots of different flavors of stablecoin. Here, the one that's detailed here is basically really inspired. It's basically Liquidity version 2, all right? It's the latest version of Liquidity. I encourage you to dive deep into it. But there are other versions of it, and here the neat thing about the Liquidity version is the interest rate management. Previous decentralized stablecoins didn't have interest rate like this. You could not delegate your interest rate management. You could not set it yourself. Usually it was either set by, usually set by governance or by other factors. All right, I hope this was clear for everyone. I want to give a shout out to the Liquidity team for their version 2 and all their work for version 1 also, their docs. I want to shout out to everyone working on BitVM, on ColliderVM, on OPCat. I want to thank also David Soroy, who's a guy working at Alpine Labs. He did a great video explaining basically what I just explained. It's a really good video if you want to have a look at it. And I want to thank you all for listening to me. Thanks. Yeah, if you have questions, I don't know. Anyone has questions? Oh, yeah.
Thank you for that. That was very interesting. What happens if, I mean, it looks like the stability, obviously the stability pool is a very critical element here, and it gets fed by the interest rates, etc. I mean, how do you make sure that the stability pool is big enough? Yeah, for like, if it's a very dense time and there's a lot of margin calls and they happen frequently, how do you protect it against that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Of course, there's no way to be 100% sure that the stability pool can absorb all the liquidations. So we can't go with the idea that this will be 100% covered at any given time. So first stop is stability pool. Hopefully it will cover. If it doesn't cover, then we go back to the version 1 of it, which is just-in-time liquidation. Anyone can come in. This bad boy right here. Anyone can come in, buy bitUSD from the market, and liquidate. This is the last resort of liquidation, basically. Hopefully we don't get this, because if it happens, the price might tend to go up, and this is something we want to avoid. But this works. This is how Maker works. This is how almost every decentralized stablecoin works. Yeah.
So it's kind of the system you describe is more like a buffer on top of.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank
you. Thank you. It was a really cool presentation. I have 2 questions. First question is like, how centralized is this architecture? Like, how reliant are you on like an Oracle, external Oracle? And how reliant are you on like some sort of external manager, like actually like pinging your smart contract to like rebalance things, for example? So,
in the ideal scenario where you get ZK rollups and blah, blah, and we're not using BitVM, etc., the Bitcoin bridge is trustless, right? So here we don't trust anyone. Of course, we need oracles for the protocol to work. So oracles, for now, depending on where you are, they're trusted or not really trusted. I mean, the trust assumptions are different. I mean, vary from oracle to oracle, but oracles will be needed, and this might be one point where trust assumptions here are important. That's what I mean. The second question was the protocol. The protocol is, if you were to write it right now, given that the trustless bridge doesn't exist yet, you'd probably want the protocol to be upgradable because you'd like to keep up with the latest technology. But if we were to have great bridges and trustless bridges, you could could make this protocol unstoppable, and this is what Liquidity v2 does actually. The protocol is deployed, no one owns the protocol, and no one controls it. Yeah.
Another question: have you thought about using like a hash time lock or like atomic swaps to like rebalance, like to get native Bitcoin back on Bitcoin network? Have you thought about integrating that into this architecture?
So here, I guess here it's more about like how do you bridge Bitcoin from one chain to another. To be honest, I don't know how atomic swap would work on Bitcoin and how do time lock hash how would you say hash time lock work. So I'm not going to answer. I don't have the answer.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting, and I like to see such good implementation and tweaking of the liquidity base model. I was just a question about the delegates. I was wondering, is it a permissionless role, and how do they get incentivized to properly curate? Is there a marketplace where I can find my delegate? Because sometimes I've been using this kind of model, and I always put way too higher rate. So if someone can choose a proper rate and monitor this rate for me, it would be way better.
Yeah, the interest rate management is kind of a funny thing because you can set yourself to like 0.5% and or 1%, and you see that everyone is 0.5. You think you're good, right? But what happens is like, of course, it's like everyone's going to be moving at the same time. When redemptions happen, everyone is going to go from 0.5 to 2, and you'll be left out at 1%. So for most people, it makes sense to have it managed by someone else. The delegate or the manager is actually incentivized because when you delegate it to him, you pay a small fee. Quite simple. And you basically do a contract with him on chain, right? Where you say, okay, you can modify this and this. You can go between this range and this range, for example. So for a fixed rate, the range will be like 5 to 5 or 6 to 6, for example. But you can offer a range. And every time you modify, every time you delegate to someone else, you pay a fee. Yeah. Good. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you.